Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. We've got a quorum present, so we'll begin today's work. We're assembled electronically for the purposes of taking public testimony on two bills before us this morning. Before we get started with the agenda, we'll have committee members introduce themselves, and we'll begin with Senator Farron.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Senator Brad Farron. I live in Norridge Walk and represent the fine people of the majority of Somerset County in the town of Rome and Kennebec County.
Okay, House Chairman Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good Tuesday morning to everybody. My name is Chris Chiazzo. I represent House District 28, beautiful West Scarborough.
Representative Kinney.
Good morning, I'm Mary Ann Kitty. I represent House District 99, 9 towns in Western Waldo County.
Representative Supika.
Good morning, I'm Laura Supika, and I represent House District 126, which is a portion of Bangor.
Okay, Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Craig Hickman. I represent Senate District 14, 11 towns in southern Kennebec County, including my hometown of Winthrop.
Representative Riley.
I am Representative Riley. I represent House District 34, which is part of Westbrook.
Representative McCrate.
Good morning, I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and part of Brunswick in the House.
Okay, my name's Louis Lucchini. I represent most of Hancock County in the Senate. With us today, we have our committee analyst, Janet Stocco, and our committee clerk, Karen Montel. So before we get started, we'll just go over a few of the guidelines for participating in a virtual committee meeting. As people probably know, this meeting is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. So that means that anyone who's a participant in the panel this morning via Zoom will be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People who are waiting to testify in the attendees list won't be seen or heard until they're called upon to speak. We will bring you into the panel. Important to note, it may take a couple of seconds. You may lose audio. But if you're patient, you'll come into the panel. Once here, you'll be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera on and then begin your testimony. As always, the audio for this meeting is being live streamed on the legislature's website. And if you've submitted written testimony, it'll be publicly posted on the legislature's website portal as well. Regarding the chat function for those in the Zoom meeting, this is a reminder that that is for technical assistance only. It's not a place for any substantive work or debate, as it's not accessible by the public. So that is just for technical assistance. For our bills today, we'll begin with the sponsors, followed by co-sponsors, then those who registered to testify in support, followed by opposition, and then those who registered to testify neither for nor against. For members of the public, when you're called upon, please state your name, your place of residence, and the organization you represent, if any. And only remarks on the legislation before us are considered in order. Anything else is considered out of order. And also a reminder that our committee uses a time clock for testimony. So public comment is limited to 3 minutes. So please tailor your remarks accordingly. Hit that 3-minute line. 3-minute mark. I'll remind you that your time is up and you can take a sentence or two to finish up your testimony. So with that, we'll move to the committee's agenda this morning. So we will bring in the two bill sponsors. We have Senator Miramont as Senator Miramont, who will present LD 1330, an act to join the National Popular Vote Compact. And then we'll recognize Representative Bell, who will present LD 1384, an act to adopt the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and then we'll begin public testimony in a merged public hearing. So welcome, Senator Miramont.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini. How are you today?
Good to see you.
You too. Nice to see everyone. We just got Marine Resources going, and but I'm here with you. So Senator Lucchini, Representative Piazza, and distinguished members of Veterans and Legal Affairs. Dave Miramont here. I represent Senate District 12, which is Knox County, except for the town of Washington. And I'm going to present LD 1330, an act to join the national popular vote. You've heard it before for those of you who've been here a while, and probably will again, but hopefully not. The Electoral College came about because the founders of this country feared that the population was not smart enough and could be easily manipulated by a tyrant. They felt that only a small group of men from each state would have the discernment to elect a qualified person. A bigger influence on the continued support for the system was the attempt to keep the Union intact. The smaller slave states in the South feared they would not be able to hang on to slavery if the larger northern states had more power to elect their candidates. Although not allowed to vote, slaves were counted as 2/5 of a person in assigning the number of electoral votes. This allowed Virginia to have a larger number of electoral votes than Pennsylvania, which had 10% more free people. This also resulted in a Virginia slaveholder being elected president during 32 of the first 36 years that the Constitution was in effect. With modern communication, we no longer need to worry that the electorate will not be informed, maybe misinformed, but we have faith that all elections except the presidential can be decided by the application of one person, one vote. And that's how it should be for all elections in this country. It's what we say, it's what we think we have, but when it comes to the presidential, that's not what happens. Joining the National Popular Vote Compact will align our electoral votes with the national popular vote. When this is done, we can truly say that each vote counts. So that was my testimony from 2 years ago. I just copied it over for this time because it's relevant and it's always good to know the roots. So, and it will open the conversation whenever I speak about this subject. There are many misunderstandings about the beginning of our country, and they are waiting to be revealed to us when we start asking questions that need to be asked. The arguments that some folks raise against joining the National Popular Vote Compact are actually the consequences of not using it. The majority of events during a presidential campaign are focused on the states that don't have a foregone conclusion. This leaves around 38 states that don't matter to the candidates. They don't matter because they always vote red. They always vote blue. There's no reason to spend effort and money in those states when winner-take-all rules determine that if it goes red, then you get then a Republican gets all of the electoral votes from that state. So you focus on the approximately 12. That changes a little which ones they are, but the approximately 12 states that could go either way, so that's where you spend your money. It doesn't matter if they're greatly populated, lesser populated. It matters that you could try to influence that electoral vote so that you can win even when you lose by 3 million votes or more. So, did I already explain that enough not to read it? I'm just going to make sure it's read in. So, the majority of events that during a presidential campaign are focused on the states that don't have a foregone conclusion. The National Popular Vote Bill has been enacted by 16 jurisdictions possessing 195 electoral votes, including 4 small states, Delaware, Hawaii, Rhode Island, Vermont, 8 medium-sized states, Colorado, Connecticut, Maryland, Mass, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington, and 3 big states, California, Illinois, New York, and the District of Columbia. The bill will take effect when enacted by states with 75 more electoral votes. So when it hits 270, this begins. It doesn't do away with the Electoral College. It just says that the votes align with the popular vote. For those who want every person and every state to have a voice that matters, the National Popular Vote Compact is a chance to have that happen. It will finally mean something when I am encouraging folks at door after door to get out to the polls and make a difference when voting for the next president. We were almost there. Let's be the next state to get this done. Thank you for consideration. I'm glad to answer questions if I can.
Thank you, Senator Miramont. Always good to see you, sir.
You too.
Any questions for the senator while we have him here? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Senator, for introducing your bill this morning.
Thank you. And I'm going to have to step out to just continue chairing Maureen a little bit because we're all at multiple places. I'm sorry. There's some great testimony coming your way, and I wish I could hear every word. Thank you.
There's always the YouTube channel, Senator, but thank you for that.
I'm gonna keep listening what I can.
Excellent. We will now recognize, Representative Bell. He can present his bill LD 1384. Sir, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you, and good morning. And I appreciated Senator Miramont's history lesson. I've heard it before, but it was good to hear again. Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, I am Art Bell, and I represent House District 47, which is Shabeek, Long Island, and Yarmouth. Today, I come to you to support LD 1384, which is my bill, which is identical to Senator Miramont's 1330, an act to join the National Popular Vote Compact. The past few election cycles have shown us that there is a lack of trust between the American voters and our government. American voters have become disillusioned with our election systems, which discourages them from participating in elections. A democracy depends upon its citizens being engaged. My bill and Senator Miramont's bill are an effort to reconnect voters with the election of their president and their vice president. The National Popular Vote Compact that this bill supports will send a message to voters that their votes matter and they matter equally. I urge you to vote ought to pass on LD 1330 and 1384. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bell. Representative Kinney.
Mr. Chair, so votes, probably should have asked also Senator Miramont on this one, but so voters' votes count equally for national popular vote, but what about ranked choice voting? How do you, that's not one person, one vote anymore either. So I don't know, I kind of have to disagree with.
Well, Secretary of State, if I may, Secretary of State Bellows will be here this morning, I believe, to amend both of our bills to take into account the fact that Maine does have ranked choice voting. So I think we should wait to hear from her as to how that will play into this into our National Popular Vote Compact.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the follow-up. Actually, I believe that the bills, when I read them, eliminates the ranked choice voting for president because this would go to the national popular vote. Maybe you can address that.
Yeah, if I may, I am not. I'm fairly certain that Secretary of State Bellows will be informing us of an amendment that she would like to introduce that will satisfy your concerns about the fact that Maine has the ranked choice voting system in place.
Senator Miramont, did you want to add to that, or?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is what she'll address because we don't want to give up ranked choice voting if we don't
Point of
have
order,
to.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Sorry, Representative Kinney.
I don't mean to be a real stickler for the rules, but Senator Miramont had his opportunity, and technically, his time has expired. We're not supposed to be going back and forth. No offense, but that's not the way it's. I realize I said I should have asked, but I should have asked him. His time has actually expired for being able to speak during a public hearing.
Yeah, I understand that, Representative Kinney. We are combining both bills, so I was creating a little leeway out of
but his
deference to the
moved on
legislature.
to the next speaker, though.
let me finish, please. So if you want to defer the point of order, then I'm happy to allow you. If you want to hold the point of order, then we can make him available for the work session if that's what you prefer.
I would prefer to hold the point of order. I don't, it's when we change the rules on one, we need to change it constantly and gets us in trouble. But absolutely, work session. I'd love to hear more from each of the sponsors. I'm more than happy to have sponsors be able to speak at a work session.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Hickman.
thank you. Point of order. This is a joint public hearing. The chair has a discretion to do whatever the chair wants. And if the committee needs to vote on your ruling, I'm prepared to vote on your ruling.
Thank you, Senator Hickman. I appreciate that. I will defer to the representative if she has concerns. I'm content allowing it to go to the public hearing. And again, no disrespect to Senator Miramont, but I will keep it. We'll keep it. I'm sure we'll have ample opportunity in the work session to have those discussions for sure. So thank you, though, Senator Hickman. I do very much appreciate that. Any other questions for Representative Bell while he is present? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Representative Bell and Senator Miramont, and we look forward to seeing you both, or at least one of you, at the work session. Okay, I don't see any other co-sponsors in the room, so we'll move on to the public hearing presentation. And again, just a reminder, if you could introduce yourself, who you represent, if anyone, where you're from, and we'll stick to 3 minutes on the testimony. I'll try and keep the clock as well as we're running. We are combining both, but there are people who have registered in favor and against, so we'll start with the in favor. We'll run through several of those, and if it gets a little long, we can switch to the against. But I will bring in first Carol Selsberg. Is Carol? There's Carol. And she'll be followed by Eileen Kreutz. And then Howard Marshall.
No.
Ms. Selsberg, when you are ready, the floor is yours.
I am ready, and I thank you. And I'm speaking on behalf of LD 1330 and Senator Lucchini and Representative Chiazzo, members of the committee. I am Carol Selsberg of Elliott. If the Constitution were perfect, there would not be 27 amendments to its 7 articles. But LD 1330 doesn't delete the Electoral College from the Constitution. It just depoliticizes it. When a candidate wins a popular vote but loses because of electors, everybody loses, especially democracy. There is no legitimate argument against repealing any obstacle in the way of a majority vote, no matter how the division is in divided state districts. One person, one vote is the essence of fair. The highest popular vote in the state of Maine will finally be counted for the candidate who has earned it. Every person in every state must be counted as one voice, not as part of a political movement or bias. Voters and all the money, millions, and machinery that produce the voting privilege go through a complex election process. There can be absolutely no justification for a current system that allows a few politically appointed electors to overturn a majority vote of the electorate. It's a sickening waste of time, money, and energy. It abuses the entire process, and it repudiates the people who are so committed to have every vote count and counted. LD 1330 has no downside. It's not just the right thing to do, but the only thing to do. So I ask you, please, to vote it should pass. And I thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you, Ms. Selsberg. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Selsberg, for your testimony this morning.
Thank you.
I am going to bump Secretary of State Bellows in first. She has a prior commitment, so I apologize for those I put in the queue, but I'm trying to accommodate schedules. So
I didn't have my hand up, so I didn't expect them to call on me.
Secretary Bellows, when you are ready, please.
Thank you, Representative Chiazzo, distinguished members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, and thank you for your flexibility. It's that time of session where we're trying to all be in multiple places at the same time. I am Secretary of State Shanna Bellows. I live in Manchester. I am the Chief Elections Officer, and I'm speaking today in support of LD 1330 and LD 1384. One of my main goals as Secretary of State is to increase participation in Maine's elections. And we've already discussed so many pieces of legislation to do just that. For too long, the Electoral College has been a barrier for American voters in many states to believing that their vote matters, which discourages them from turning out in their election. Why would they, when they know that their vote for a Republican presidential candidate in Massachusetts or a Democratic presidential candidate in Alabama won't have an impact on the voting that actually matters, the votes of the Electoral College? The same is true in Maine, especially with our assigning Electoral College votes, both by the overall state majority and by congressional district. Given the results of the last couple of elections, it can be challenging for a voter to feel like their vote matters if they're supporting a Democrat in Dover-Foxcroft or a Republican in Brunswick. By joining the National Popular Vote Compact, Maine would send a message to voters here and across the country that their voices matter and that they matter equally. No longer will Florida, Michigan, Iowa, New Hampshire, or other perennial swing states dominate presidential campaigns' attention. Under the National Popular Vote Compact, a vote in Allagash counts the same as a vote in Elliott or in New York City. We would suggest, to Representative Kinney's point and Representative Bell's willingness to amend is laudable. We would recommend that amending LD 1330 and LD 1384 to continue to use ranked choice voting in general elections for president. In telling voters that their voices matter, we certainly should not be undoing a decision that's been upheld multiple times by Maine voters at the ballot box. So in terms of doing that, we've proposed an amendment in my testimony. We suggest that we amend section 803 of Title 21A as follows, where it states the certificate shall state the names and electors of the number of votes which each received. We recommend that it read, the certificate shall state the names of the electors and the number of final round votes received by each presidential, vice presidential slate that has votes in the final round of statewide or district-wide tabulation. When voters trust that their vote matters, they turn out to make their voices heard. Joining the National Popular Vote Compact would send that indication to Maine voters, and I urge your support and happy to work with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Bellows. Any questions for the Secretary while we have her here? Seeing none. Thank you, Secretary Bellows, for your testimony this morning. Up next, we will go to Eileen Kreutz, and she will be followed by Howard Marshall, and then Janice Cohen. So, Ms. Kreutz, if you are available.
I am here. My name is Eileen Kreutz, and for many years I have served as the election clerk and then warden in the town of Industry in the county of Franklin. I want to give one example of why we need to move in the direction of a national popular vote. In November of 2016, on election night, I finished the tally, sent in the numbers, got prepared to walk out of the door of town hall, and someone told me that Hillary Clinton was ahead in the election. I drove exactly 1 mile. I lived very close. By the time I walked in my door at home, a swing state had swung and Donald Trump was being declared the winner. I wondered how, from that moment on, how an election could flip that quickly. And I started to study the Electoral College, the obvious issue of swing states, the winner-take-all system. Much of this was mentioned. Thankfully, I can cut some words because Senator Mearmont mentioned it. So I refer to all of the historical things there. I'm going to, in the interest of time, jump to my bullet points, and I have explanations for all of these. But elections are in the hands of the states. Our state has entered many interstate compacts, so it's as simple as that. We simply do it. We would join the compact. We would then empower Maine voters by joining their votes with others around the country. And there's no need for an amendment to the Constitution on this. States have the power over how they do their elections. Candidates would need to hold campaign events here. That would bring revenue and news media to our state. They would need to court our voters. The candidates who reach out the best in the most inclusive manner with the best platforms and stances on the issues of the day would garner the most votes in the nation, and they would bring democracy to its true meaning. One person, one vote makes sense to the voters and has the end result of helping citizens trust their government again. The person who occupies the Oval Office should be the one who is voted in by the majority of Americans. Lastly, Maine empowers itself by joining this compact, and it empowers its citizens as well. I hope that this legislation moves all the way through. I know it's passed one chamber in the past, and I look forward to seeing it be signed into law so that we join with states who can make the Electoral College work for our current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kreutz. Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your comments about how swing states can affect with the Electoral College, but wouldn't you agree that states with large populations like California, New York, Texas could easily do the same thing in a national popular vote?
Actually, a great deal of math has been done on this. Thank you for the question. If you look on National Popular Vote, you will find comparisons and final numbers ranking small states up against the large states, also cities against rural areas, as we have. It comes out a basic wash. You get the power back by joining voters around the country. They have done a lot of math on this. I want my vote empowered, not canceled. What I experienced walking into from that vote, from that election night count, was seeing my vote no longer count at all. So thank you for that question.
Follow-up, Representative Kinney.
Quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to your idea of the math, it's my understanding that the math with the Electoral College here in Maine, our votes are weighted at about 0.4% of the national vote versus if we went to national popular vote, it drops to like 0.1 or even less than 0.1%. So I'm not sure, I don't know how we can have different types of math going around at the moment. I'm just wondering if you've looked at that math equation.
The numbers I'm referring to are actually one number for each vote. One vote, one count. That's the numbers I'm referring to. So not putting it in relation to what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kreutz. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Up next, we will recognize Howard Marshall. Mr. Marshall, when you are ready, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Howard Marshall. I live in Harpswell. I attended this hearing 2 years ago and spoke briefly during the testimony. My feelings, well, I will say that Senator Miramont said a lot of what I was going to say, so I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I think the issue here is that if we're serious about equality, every person's vote across the country should count the same when we're electing the president. Currently, every vote in Wyoming is worth 6 votes in California. And that's just, it's not letting the people, equally vote on the president. 2 years ago, the argument was made that we should not let New York and California dictate Maine's electoral votes. But that's not the fact. The fact is that 12 or 15 swing states determine the outcome of the election, while 35 states are spectators that are just taken for granted by the candidates. In fact, if we go to a national popular vote as NP Vic arranges, then it'll be a true 50 vote or 50 state election with every voter's participation being equal. in fact, it will also encourage participation in the election, because if you live in a state where one of those 35 states where the outcome is essentially determined ahead of time, if something comes up that day, you just don't bother to vote because it doesn't matter. You're not going to affect the outcome. And and also in the same vein, the people who vote in the minority in each state are completely canceled out of the results of the election. So there are millions of voters in Texas and California whose votes have no impact on the outcome. Finally, the original intent of the Electoral College was an idea that we would pick people who were going to express their judgment in determining who was elected president. That these would be a firewall against mob rule. But in fact, the way it's evolved is that they are just party loyalists who get up and make their vote for the winner in their state without any reference to considering considering the outcome, without using their own original thought. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Perfect timing, sir. Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Marshall, for being here and for your testimony. You mentioned that equal votes, and we're hearing that we want to leave ranked choice voting in place. So that, to me, doesn't give equal, because one person may vote for one of the top two candidates, but then someone else might vote for a third or fourth place candidate. And then their vote gets to count again and again and again until we get to a quote unquote majority, which can change from the original majority down to a different majority person getting those votes. And where you also mentioned on party loyalists are the ones that are doing the Electoral College voting. Are you aware that in 2016, the Electoral College voters are supposed to vote the way that the voters voted for those Electoral College votes? And the 3 votes that were supposed to go to Hillary Clinton, one of those members chose to vote for Bernie Sanders instead of Hillary.
To take the second part first, that those are very tiny blips compared to what happens, and has never made a difference in the outcome of the election. As far as the ranked choice voting, that's not how ranked choice voting works. I'm sorry to have to disagree with you. There is no one in the majority on the first round of voting. There's a plurality, and the goal of ranked choice voting is to narrow it down to 2 people that that are acceptable to all the voters whose votes count in that final round. And the votes, you don't get, your vote doesn't count again and again. The votes just get recounted until there is someone who actually exceeds 50% of the vote. So I think that to include ranked choice voting in this and narrow it down to the 2 majority party candidates, which is what will happen in the ranked choice voting, and issuing the votes in that final round of the ranked choice voting makes sense. It's not changing it's not eliminating ranked choice voting, and it's allowing the voters' voice to be heard.
Follow up, Representative Kinney.
Thank you. Yes, just a quick follow-up. You were right. I apologize. I used the wrong term in terms of the fact that we do have a plurality, but what ends up happening with ranked choice voting does not always end up with a majority of votes cast in the original vote, as someone who voted for someone who didn't end up in the top 2 and chose not to continue to vote for one of those top 2, their vote gets exhausted and therefore dropped out. And then a true majority of those votes cast on election day aren't necessarily a true majority.
So I will remind the committee to please use questions for the members. So? Yeah, thank you. I know this can be a contentious issue, so let's please kind of stick to question if we could. Thank you, Representative Kinney.
I apologize. I did mean for that to be answered in some way.
So Nothing is perfect, but I think that ranked choice voting is a big improvement over having, a large number of candidates, all but two of which get a tiny percentage of the vote. And on top of it, it allows someone to express their preference for somebody who almost certainly is not going to be the winner, but then go and say, but if I can't have this person who's my ideal candidate, here's the person that's likely to be one of the top two, and that's the person that I want. And I think that is a far better system than simply saying everybody's vote gets counted on election night, and you get somebody with 35% beat somebody with 34%, while 10 people get 2 or 3% each.
Thank you, Representative Kinney. Representative Dolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question, and maybe you can make me understand it better. But with a national popular vote, Maine has roughly a little over 1 million people. California has 40 million people. So how can one vote, one person matter when we have huge states like this that we're up against? So Maine could count and have a winner, but California, don't you feel, they're gonna take over the votes from us. So our vote wouldn't really matter in this type.
I see two things. One is I don't quite understand why it should be that this is based on states. We're electing a national president, and as it is now, California has many more electoral votes than Maine. So and so does Florida, so does Texas. But the fact is that the Electoral College, especially when, it's up to the states to implement it, so they can do whatever they want. That's what this hearing is about. It's about the state deciding how we're going to allocate our electors. But somehow, early on, it became a winner-take-all thing, which, granted, Maine is one of the two states that doesn't do that. But the fact that you add into it the winner-take-all means that you get a slate of electors for one party from each state, and so all of the people who didn't vote for whoever won in that state just basically has their votes canceled out. It's not so much state by state. It's a matter of, millions of people in California vote Republican and their votes vanish in the final count. Millions of people vote Democratic in Texas and their votes vanish in the final count. It's true, Maine splitting its electoral votes, like Nebraska does, is different, but it's the fact that the other 48 states do it by winner take all means that you get these skewed results in the elections that don't reflect the majority feeling in the country. And I think that what we need to do is we need to get the national popular vote in place. This is a way to do it that does not require an amendment to the Constitution, and it means that that yes, there are many more people in California, but why should their votes not count as much as the people in other states? Why should each vote there represent a tinier fraction of an electoral vote than in the other states? It simply, I don't see the reason that the justification for diluting the influence of each voter in large states.
Thank you, Representative Dolph. Follow up?
Yes, please. Thank you. I guess I don't see your point, because all the testimony has been, we want our vote to count. But when Maine only has like a little over 1 million people and other bigger states have 40 million, we're like 1 to 40. Our whole state won't matter. At least it would come down to our electoral votes, which, California, yes, their electoral votes are more than what we have, but it's the odds aren't 40 to 1, if you understand my point.
Again, I will remind the committee, we will have ample time in work session to debate points. If there are qualifying questions for the person testifying for their testimony, then please feel free to ask those, but let's limit debate to the work session if we could, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Marshall while we have him here? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for your time this morning. We appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
before us.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Janice Cohen, and she will be followed by John Bradigam and then Lori Calderon.
Thank you, Representative Cazzo. I don't think I'm going to add much to what's already been said, but I have to admit that when I first got involved with looking at the national popular vote, I was very confused about it. So I will tell you what I have learned about it and why I think it is so important. The trust level between Americans and their government is at an all-time low. Many Americans feel that there is a disconnect between what people want and what their government does. When people feel that government can't be trusted, the system is too complex and the electoral system is complex, and their vote really doesn't matter, we are at risk of losing our democracy. A democracy depends on its citizens being engaged. When the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, many of them believed that only white male landowners were capable of making a decision on who should be president. Many early settlers were uninformed due to the lack of access to information about our government and its leaders. Some of our founders even were not sure that they wanted a national leader. There was the state versus the national debate going on during the writing of the Constitution. Times have changed, although gradually. All Americans over the age of 18 have a right to vote. Everyone has access to the information necessary to make an informed decision. We have the technology to accurately tally every vote. Most importantly, this is an election of president and vice president of all the people, and every vote should count. This bill is an effort to reconnect voters with the election of their president and vice president. Most Americans do not understand how the electoral college works and assumes that these top national representatives are elected by how the majority of voters vote. Unfortunately, because each state has a different number of electors, not every vote is equal. If you live in a state whose majority of voters belong to a different party than yours, it is unlikely that your vote will be included in the tally for president or vice president. Swing states with a close number of Republicans and Democrats are courted by presidential candidates for their electoral college votes. Most states, including Maine, have few presidential campaign visits because how we will vote in each district is already determined. Democrat in the first district and Republican in the second. Thus, if you're a Republican in the first district or a Democrat in the second, you likely feel that your vote doesn't matter, and it doesn't. It is easy to see why many voters feel disenfranchised for their election process. While will always be elections where the majority of voters are elated or the minority is disappointed, at least everyone would know that their vote counted. And I wanted to say, we're not talking about an election by states. We're talking about an election by people. And so we need to reconnect the people with the election for president and vice president. America is at a crossroad. Can we be one nation that honors democracy over party affiliation, geography, or individual differences? The national popular vote supported by this bill will help us answer that question.
Ms. Cohen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your time has expired. So if you could please wrap your comments up, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I had one more statement. Please vote in favor of LD 1330, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. And I'm sorry, for the record, could you state where you're from and who you're representing, if anyone?
I'm from Scarborough, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, but I'm not representing them here.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. I thought I recognized your voice. It's always great to hear from you.
You do.
Any questions for Ms. Cohen while we have her in front of the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will have John Bradigan from the League of Women Voters, and he will be followed by Lori Calderon and then Tracy Haskell. So, Mr. Bradigan, when you are ready, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Cazzo and Chairman Lucchini and esteemed members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is John Bradigan, and I'm here today as Legal Counsel and Policy Advisor for the League of Women Voters of Maine. We strongly support electing our president and vice president by popular vote, and we support the National Popular Vote Compact to achieve that result. Simply put, we believe that every voter across all 50 states and the District of Columbia should matter equally in electing the president. The current system is not only anachronistic, it results in undemocratic outcomes which do not enhance the stability and public confidence in the single most important election in our country. Popular election of public officials has been a feature of our democracy across the country for over 150 years. And in that time, our commitment to electoral democracy has grown to become part of our political culture and a bedrock feature in our democracy. The idea that the person with the most votes wins is familiar to every school child and is based on a value that transcends long ago political compromises. The presidency is unique. The only official chosen by every eligible voter across the entire country, and the only office equally accountable to each and every person in every state and territory. The president is the president of the people, not of the states. Yet when each state uses a winner-take-all approach based on the vote within that state for electing the president, the result does not necessarily reflect one person, one vote. The system now in place does not align with our bedrock principles. Now that goal is within reach. It does not need a constitutional amendment, and it does not require abolition of the Electoral College. And the allocation of electors for any one state is not required by the US Constitution or the Maine Constitution. It's not required by federal law. Once this bill takes effect, state law would direct our electors to vote for the winner of the national popular vote rather than the state or district popular vote. It's that simple. This rule would only take effect when enough states have agreed to join together to allocate their electors in this manner. It really is simple. The electors entrusted to our state by the federal constitution are under state control. The power to allocate them is a power entrusted to you, our legislature. The current system centered around winner take all doesn't mean candidates focus on big states or small states. It means that they focus on the most closely divided states, the swing states. Maine has not been one of the beneficiaries of this. So the question here is whether we should choose the president of the United States by popular vote. There's a short answer and there's a much longer answer, but the short answer is, of course we should. The president should be the president of all the people. Why make this more complicated and more convoluted? There should be a clear and straightforward choice by the voters that the president would represent. The current system of each state using winner take all renders millions of votes meaningless and is undemocratic. That's why we support national popular voting. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Brodigan. Any questions from the committee while we have him here? All right, seeing none. Thank you, sir, for your testimony this morning. Up next, we'll go to Lori Calderon, and she'll be followed by Tracy Haskell, and then Matthew Schaefer, I believe, if he is in. Yes, Matthew Schaefer will be next. So, Ms. Calderon, when you are ready, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee members. I'm Lori Calderon from beautiful Dover Foxcroft, and I'm testifying in favor of both of the national popular vote bills, and as amended by the Secretary of State's proposals around ranked choice voting. I support the national popular vote because it ensures no second place winners, and because it makes every vote in every state and in every presidential election equal. And that is the foundation of our democratic republic, equality in the vote. We're at a point in our country where we actually have to protect the will of the majority. Let that sink in for a moment. The framers did build in two advantages for small states. First, that there's 2 senators for every small state, regardless of population, California, Maine. And second, the only actual electoral college advantage is that if there is a tie in the electoral college, each state, regardless of population, gets 1 vote in breaking that tie. Those are the advantages built in for the small states. But today we're no longer a country of 3.9 million as we were in 1787. The largest city then was 31,000 people, New York City. Blacks, women, Native Americans, and white men without property had no right to vote. But since then, a lot of change. There's been a massive population growth and a demographic shift. And that Senate, that small Senate state, small Senate state majority, let me start again. That Senate small state advantage today means that in a 50-50 Senate, the minority party represents 41 million fewer Americans than the majority. And today we have, instead of a country that is 97% rural as it was in 1787, about 20% of Americans live in cities, 20% in rural areas, and the rest live in towns and cities under 200,000. That Senate small state advantage from 1787 results today in a Senate that doesn't represent the majority of Americans and most dramatically underrepresents minority Americans. There's no question that small states like Maine have an advantage, and that can be seen as a positive. But as the country as a whole is not represented by the Senate structure today. And add gerrymandering, and we have that same problem of lack of representation of all of the people of the United States. So we end up with a system in which at least 2 of our institutions fail to represent the majority of voters, potentially, and that happens to be the reality today. Let me just speak to California. 17 million Californians voted in 2020 out of 160 million voters. That's not enough to win the White House. 6 million of those were Republican votes that were irrelevant. And the same is true in Maine. If you live in District 1 or if you live in District 2 and we're in the minority, your vote did not matter. And the National Popular Vote will actually make sure every single voter in the state of Maine has a vote that makes a difference and is relevant. Whereas today, if you vote for the minority, your vote does not matter in the state of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Calderon. Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everybody keeps saying that if you live in District 1 or you live in District 2 and you voted in the minority, your vote doesn't matter. So if we go to national popular vote, if I voted in the minority, happen to live in District 2. If I vote in the minority of the statewide, but the majority of CD2, under the national popular vote, won't my vote not matter anymore?
No, your vote will matter. Your vote will matter. Here's how it will matter. Today, I live in a district in which my vote, the person I voted for did not win, just like 179,000 other votes in my district who voted for the person who did not win. So those votes were not relevant, right? That one electoral vote for the congressional district went for Mr. Trump, and in District 2 went for Mr. Biden. And so people who voted in the minority, they voted, but their vote didn't have any political relevance at all. Take away the district method, which I just call winner take all at the district level. Take away all of those you're shaking your head, but I'm trying to explain. I'm sorry. Take away the state winner take all of all the other states. My vote for whomever I vote for goes into is counted and certified by the Secretary of State, results reported just as they are today. All the votes for each candidate are tallied after the Secretaries of State certify their elections. And whoever has the most actually wins the White House. And so your vote, whoever you voted for, joined with the votes of, hopefully for you, millions and millions of other people in the United States, like those 6 million Californians who voted for Trump, and they might as well have not voted, right? Those 5 million Texans who voted for Biden, they might as well have not voted. With a national popular vote, those all get counted and they're politically relevant. Most important to me, and I will now wrap, is I don't want to live in a country where the president of the United States can't win the majority of the vote. That makes no sense.
Follow up, Representative Kinney.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So based on the way you're saying this, anyone who votes for the minority at any point, whether it's Republican or Democrat in the future, the minority vote just doesn't count anyway. From the words you're saying, it just seems like you're saying that your minority vote, you may as well never have voted. Isn't that really what you're saying?
No. I mean, of course, let's take a statewide election, which is the same as what a national would be, but we're doing it within the state. So our state senators run for office, our federal officers. And if I vote for the winner, that's great. I'm happy. But if I vote in this statewide one tally election for the loser, it is what it is. That's just fair. I've had my chance to vote, but I didn't. My person didn't win. Same thing happens on the national level. And that's all that national popular vote is really doing there, is taking away those state boundaries and letting every vote be politically relevant.
Thank you. Follow up, Representative Kinney?
One last follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So let's say the state majority, let's say the majority of the state, CD2, the whole entire state votes for one candidate. So the people of the state of Maine had voted for one candidate, but on the national level, at the national level, the popular vote went to the other candidate. So we're going to throw away the majority of Mainers' votes to go with the majority of the rest of the nation. I thought it was always supposed to be, and so goes as Maine goes, so goes the nation. Isn't that what you're saying? If the national vote ends up the national popular, but Maine votes the other way, wouldn't that throw away all the majority vote of the state Mainers and the people in the state?
The structure of the Electoral College has taught us, which we need to unlearn, that those 4 electoral votes equal me, equal Maine. Well, they don't. I mean, that's the way this Electoral College works, but the reality is that there are Republicans, Democrats, and independents in every single state in the country. And so when Maine when it voted like for 8 consecutive elections for the Republican candidate who won the office, the Democrats in the state couldn't say their vote didn't matter, didn't count. The electoral votes legitimately under the current system went to the Republican. The same happens at the national level. All of the people who voted for candidate A get pulled together, and if they win, that's great. If they don't, next time, right? The thing is, I am not the state of Maine. I don't vote based on being a Mainer, and I don't know anybody in my world who votes because of where they live. So we need to take the walls down, the barriers down, free our votes.
Thank you, Representative Kinney. Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Calderon, for your testimony today. I take particular interest in, you said we live in a country today where we have to protect the will of the majority in an election. And interestingly, on January the 6th, when the Congress met to certify the electoral votes of all of the states that had certified their electoral votes after recount, there were way too many members of Congress who did not want to certify that vote. If that didn't happen, and there was no certification of the vote, you also spoke to how we elect a president when the Electoral College doesn't choose it by a majority vote of the Electoral College. Can you explain that part of Constitution and federal law a little bit more so that people really understand what would happen if, say, the insurrection had succeeded and we didn't certify the electoral votes, and so they could not have been cast for either candidate?
Well, to the extent I understand it, what the Constitution provides is that if there is a tie in the Electoral College, first of all, 269 to 269, right? Then the election goes to the House, where each House representative, each state, I'm sorry, has one vote. The majority representatives of that state, maybe they're Republican in Wyoming, they get to choose, right? Because they're the majority. In Maine, it would be, they'd have to figure that out. I'm not a constitutional scholar, just read my history. But it's one vote, one state to break the tie, which is another undemocratic kind of problem we've got. To be honest, I don't know what would have happened after January 6th if the insurrectionists had succeeded in stopping the electoral count. This is terrifying to me.
Yeah, I think that the Constitution and federal law say that the majority vote of the Electoral College determines the president. So whether it's a tie vote or whether the electoral vote isn't counted at all because it's not actually certified, the election is thrown to the House of Representatives, in which case one state has one vote. So I just wanted you to clarify that a little bit more, because what you are saying is that the Constitution and federal law around how we choose a president actually favors small states.
Small states. Absolutely.
Not large
absolutely
states. Small states.
No, it favors small states. That's
Thank
exactly right. And yeah.
And again, just for consistency, maybe the senator could add, "Isn't that so?" at the end of the statement, so that we could get the question in there. So thank you, Senator Hickman. Any questions for Ms. Calderon? Seeing none. Thank you very much this morning for your testimony, Ms. Calderon. Up next, we have Tracy Haskell, and she will be followed by Matthew Schaefer. Ms. Haskell, when you are ready, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Tracy Haskell. I reside in Bar Harbor, and I am here today as a volunteer for the Maine Unitarian Universalist State Advocacy Network, or MUSON. I am testifying in support of LD 1330, an act to join the National Popular Vote Compact. MUSON is a faith-based statewide network of Unitarian Universalists committed to a legislative ministry that promotes and protects democracy. In living our faith, Unitarian Universalists are guided by a set of 7 principles which we hold as moral guides. These strong values affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, they affirm justice, and they affirm the use of the democratic process. The 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act, the United States has a long history of reaching for justice and equality within our electoral system. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is another opportunity to becoming the democracy where there truly is equality for all voters. The National Popular Vote Compact would make one person, one vote a reality, and would provide a mechanism where the electorate accurately represents the voices of the people. Democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote is at the very heart of our Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe strongly in justice. It is a sacred path where all voters are valued equally, no matter where they live. Unitarian Universalists are known to be people who show up. Today, we are showing up for democracy by embodying the values of our faith, by advocating for a future where each and every vote counts. Maine Unitarian Universalists, in affirming and promoting the democratic process, ask you to please pass LD 1330 and act to join the National Popular Vote Compact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Haskell. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Okay, next on our list, we have Matthew Schaefer. And Matthew will be followed by Herb Adams and Tessa Burpee. So welcome, Mr. Schaefer, if you can hear us.
I can. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Matthew Schaefer. I'm a resident of Portland and an attorney. I am testifying in support of LD 1384 because I believe the ballot of every voter for President of the United States should have equal weight. Sadly, under the system currently used by states to choose the electors designated to participate in the Electoral College, tens of millions of voters nationwide and hundreds of thousands of voters in Maine cast votes for president that are, in effect, meaningless. We can do better. There's nothing in the Constitution of the United States that dictates the current iteration of the winner-take-all system of choosing electors that has been adopted in nearly every state, nor does the Constitution prescribe Maine's modified system of allocating its electors. To the contrary, the Constitution permits each state legislature to determine how it will appoint the state's electors. We can should adopt a method of selecting electors that guarantees the most democratic outcome for the one office that represents all of the people of the United States, the presidency. Unfortunately, the current state-by-state winner-take-all approach creates a system in which only a small number of key battleground states matter in determining the outcome of our presidential elections. In states that are not competitive, the members of the minority party play no role in determining who their president will be. For example, Republicans in California and Democrats in states across the South go to the polls every 4 years, knowing that they will cast a vote that will have no value in electing the president. A partial district level allocation like Maine's only marginally changes the calculus. In fact, all voters in Maine suffer under the current system. Because only a few closely contested states matter under the prevailing approach to electing the president, voters in those crucial battleground states cast ballots of outsized importance. As a result, almost all other states, including Maine, are virtually ignored during the campaign because the current system badly skews the outcome in the Electoral College so that it hinges on only a small minority of states, such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Millions of Americans in other states, Mainers included, watch helplessly for the results of those winner-take-all ballots in the battleground states. Such a system is not democratic, equitable, or just. The National Popular Vote Compact will correct this injustice. It does not abolish the Electoral College, as some claim, but instead reforms the way states appoint their electors to ensure that the vote of every American is of equal weight in choosing the president, without regard to where a voter lives. Once states comprising a sufficient number of electoral votes make up a majority of the Electoral College have adopted the compact, our elections will no longer discount the votes of millions of Americans and thousands of Mainers. I thank you for letting me testify, and I urge your support of LD 1384 or a similar measure.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, for your testimony this morning. Any questions from the committee at this time? Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Schaefer. Can you just reconcile something for me? Because in Maine, if we were to pass this bill, then the legislature on behalf of the people would be saying, we want our votes for president to go to the winner of the national popular vote, correct?
Yes, the legislature has the authority under the Constitution to choose the manner of appointing Maine's electors.
And in the last election, we saw some state legislatures under pressure wanted to change the electoral votes that have been certified by their population. Do you remember that?
I recall that there were different pressures in different states during the post-election process.
So how do we reconcile those two things? If a state legislature says, we want to cast our votes for a different person who the popular vote of this state chose, isn't that kind of similar to this?
If I understand your question, the Constitution gives the authority to the legislature of each state to determine how to appoint electors. So
Correct.
It is ultimately a determination of the legislature of each state how it will go about doing that. My hope, of course, would be that a legislature, having selected a method that is consistent with its authority and the will of the people of the state, would continue to implement that methodology even in a situation of a hotly contested election, that the decision of the legislature would be honored in the post-election process, just as it was intended to be when adopted.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Schaefer, for your testimony. Okay, next up, we have Herb Adams, followed by Tessa Burpee and Trent England. So welcome, I believe, Honorable Mr. Adams.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me properly? A borrowed computer here. Am I coming through?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable chairs, senators, representatives, men and women of the committee, my name is Herb Adams. I live in Portland. I'm a instructor at Southern Maine Community College in government and social science. And I sat where you sit up until term limits removed me a few years ago. Now, I support direct election of the president by a national majority popular vote. This bill does not do that. I support eliminating, getting rid of the Electoral College. This bill does not do that. Instead, the bill combines the worst pieces and big problems of both systems and expects us to call the result an improvement. I maintain it's anything but. It is full of pitfalls, and we should look carefully at, I'm going to try to raise 6 in the time given to me, look at them first. Look before you join. It's like running full tilt across a rocky field, blindfolded and in snowshoes, and expecting to have no trouble. Here's why. Number one, just last June 2020, the United States Supreme Court decided unanimously that all states can require their electoral votes be cast exactly the way that states' voters decided. That's 32 states and the District of Columbia already have such a law on the books. In fact, of the 15 states that have thus far accepted the compact, 11 of them have that very law on the books. There would be an enormous complication of trying to reconcile these two competing systems if you are to maintain the trust of the voters. This bill, and it's been interesting to hear the comments about it, would present enormous problems as written to Maine's ranked choice voting system. It would be extremely difficult to use the same set of results to do two separate things. The NPV and the RCV are two completely different systems that don't fit. It's going to be complex. Be like wearing a horseshoe for a mitten or putting a glove on your foot. You know, the two systems are meant for two different purposes. I'm not sure Maine would be happy if we tampered too much with ranked choice voting at all. Thirdly, this bill also mandates that no state that joins the compact can pull out of the compact within 6 months of the presidential inauguration day, even if the state sees trouble and lawsuits coming. Now, that's invalid on the face of it, colleagues. Maine has, as you know, the standing position that no legislature can forever bind another legislature. No legislature can make a law that says a future legislature can never change that law. Can you imagine the mess we'd be in if that had been the fact in the past? The Maine legislature can change any law whenever we are in session, and the Maine legislature will be in session between election day and presidential years and the day that the electoral vote is cast. We call that day swearing in day. I myself and many of my colleagues introduced bills that were passed that day. Mine had to do with heating assistance programs. We could change anything. It's invalid on the face of it. Fourth, interstate compacts require
Mr. Adams,
the
I
consent
hate
of
to
Congress.
interrupt you, but your time has expired. If you can very quickly wrap it up, that would be appreciated.
I will do that. Thank you. On this computer, the timer does not work, so I appreciate that. Interstate compacts must be ratified by Congress. Most of them have to do with water basins and disease control. You know, certainly the method of electing the presidency of the United States falls within the interest of Congress, whose states will be either in or out of the compact. And you can imagine where that is going to end up in the United States Supreme Court. All must be decided in the 30 or 40 days between the election and the casting of the electoral vote. Lastly, and to conclude, Mr. Chairman, the assumption here is that people care more about the electoral vote than they do their own vote. It would have meant that if Maine had joined the compact and the compact had gone into effect in 2016 and 2020, then Maine would have cast all or part of its electoral vote for the exact opposite person than who carried the state of Maine. Talk about trust between the state and its voters. You know, it's one thing to say, yeah, well, we know how you voted, but we folks in Augusta decided we have a better way to cast your vote. Certainly to
Mr. Adams, I'm afraid we're going to have to stop you there.
That's quite all right. I will submit other things. It's the
Yeah.
professor in me. You understand. Thank you, Senator.
If you can, and I apologize, but if we have to be consistent with everybody, and if you can submit written testimony, that would be appreciated.
Quite so, and thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Adams, for your testimony. Thank you for bringing up the word reconcile, because that's what I was asking a previous testifier. Do you think that these things are therefore irreconcilable?
I believe that if you attempt to upend the Constitution of the United States, but not amend it, that is irreconcilable. To overturn the way in which the Constitution lays out, as much as it does, the way of electing a president, and expect an agreement made by a club, in a sense, a compact, to overturn it and not bring in the United States Supreme Court raging on that one, is to expect something that's just not real. I think they're irreconcilable. You have to eliminate the Electoral College, which I support, and that's where we should be putting our efforts. We have to amend the Constitution to do that, and that's where we should be putting our efforts. And that's why I think it's an unreconcilable, Senator. Whatever our good hopes for a better system may be, those are the two steps.
Thank you.
Any further questions this time? Okay, seeing none. Thank you again for your testimony, Professor. Okay, next up, we will go to Tessa Burpee, followed by Trent England and Michael Morley. So welcome, Ms. Burpee.
Good morning, thank you. And good morning to all of you on the Committee of Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Tessa Burpee, and I live in Brewer, and I'm here this morning to oppose LD 1330 and 1384. I appreciate some of the points that have been brought up by those who've testified in support of these bills and the discussion that has brought up regarding the winner-take-all states. And I would agree that that is a problem, but I don't think the answer is to surrender our voice in the national election, but rather to continue to lead by example of splitting our votes to represent how the people in Maine, in each part of Maine, of each of our districts, how they actually vote. Because Maine splits its votes based on who the people in each district vote for, our electoral college votes do represent how we vote in Maine and in each of our districts. And that's evidenced, of course, by the last two elections and how we split our electoral votes. I grew up in District 2 and I still live in District 2. And if passed, these bills would ignore who we voted for in an election, if we should have another election like the last two, and surrender our voice instead to who the people in the rest of the country vote for. And it's only one electoral vote, but it's one vote and it's ours to cast. And the state does have the ability to decide how our votes are cast in the electoral college, but why would we give away our voice and let the rest of the country decide that? Especially where we have that ability to split our votes and represent who the people in each district vote for. We're a constitutional republic, and the Electoral College is a foundation, part of the foundation of that, and it gives rural areas like District 2 a voice in the national election. if you agree to this compact, like the last presenter said, you use the shell of the Electoral College, but you negate the power of it by agreeing to use this compact to give our votes to whoever wins the national popular vote. So it's a blatant attempt to change the nature of our republic and use the Electoral College to enforce the majority popular vote, which it's not designed to do. And then for those of you who represent the people in the second district, I just ask that you please do not ignore how the majority of the people in your districts voted in the last two elections. And please consider what that says about the independent spirit of all Mainers. Our two districts voted differently in the last two presidential elections, and we split our electoral votes accordingly. And I would just ask that you please ensure that our voice continues to be heard in the national political arena by voting against these bills. And let's continue to use the Electoral College as it was designed to work, to represent rural areas like District 2 by casting our vote for who receives the most of our votes. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you for your testimony this morning. Any questions from the committee? Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Burpee, for your testimony. Can you tell me how you looked at, opined about, felt about those members of Congress who voted not to certify the electoral votes of their states?
And this kind of deviates a bit from the bill, but
it's just about the strength of the Electoral College, Mr. Chair. And so I'm not trying to get into an argument about fraud. I just want to know how it was to see that members of Congress voted to not certify the votes of the voters in their states. And so
yeah, I understand your question. I'm just going to say, because on both sides, it's become a little debating this morning, and I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable is coming here to testify from the public. So yeah, if you want to speak to the strength of the Electoral College, but this bill is about joining the compact.
I'll try. And you're talking about states not wanting to certify other states' electoral votes?
Yes.
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 Well, I think it's interesting. I'm actually at homeschool, and we've just come through the foundation of our country in sixth grade history, which has been very interesting. And initially, we were states that came together for joint purposes, for things, for national defense and for other things. The founders were not looking to establish a centralized government. So it is important that we have confidence in our fellow states in how they, if we suspect there's fraud in another state, that is our responsibility and our right as a state to call that out and say, well, we need to look into that before we would certify those results. And so I think it is, it's interesting just in light of our history and how we were states that joined together. We were not a country initially. We were states that joined together for certain purposes, for trade, for defense. And so I think we have to have that confidence in how other states hold their elections. Otherwise we can't have confidence in who we've elected.
And so is that also why you wouldn't want to join the compact, because you wouldn't have confidence in how other states elected the president?
I think it's more, for me, it's more about the rural areas, and what the Electoral College was designed to do was make sure that all areas of the country had representation in that national election. And I have to agree with a lot of what the first speaker said, even though I maybe don't agree that we get rid of the Electoral College. I think we can't combine the two methods. And I think that a better model would be to have the electoral votes split in states. I mean, why don't other states do what we do so that each area is represented? Because in Maine, our votes did go to who we voted for. But if we took the last two elections and we and we just applied this national popular vote, we would be taking away who the people of District 2 voted for. We would lose that. We would just be eliminating that.
Thank you.
Thank you
Any
for your
further,
question.
any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Burpee.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Trent England, followed by Michael Morley and Penny Morrill. So welcome, Mr. England.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Trent England. I hail from another small state, that being Oklahoma. I'm a fellow of the Opportunity Solutions Project, but more importantly, I'm an author and a documentary filmmaker of a book and a film about the presidential election process. This has been an interest of mine in a research area going back to the 1990s, which is to say, going back before anybody was really interested in the Electoral College. I want to address three topics, and but I'm going to deviate from that just a little bit because Senator Hickman has raised several times such an important point, which is what we've seen play out over these last, six or so months, with the incredible distrust and the challenges to the electoral process. And I do think that goes to the heart of part of my concern about this national popular vote interstate compact, which is that it would create the kind of instability where states are trying to rely on other states, right? The National Popular Vote Compact, every state within the compact certifies for itself a national popular vote result, but only for itself, based on the results from every other state. Every state in the compact is trying to aggregate every other state's results, whether they're in the compact or not, right? And so any little bit, let alone a big controversies, but any little controversy among those states is going to cause at least an instability, if not an impossibility, in aggregating that national popular vote result. But I think that the points that I wanted to leave for the committee, national popular vote would destroy Maine's unique system. It might very well decrease voter turnout, and it's not at all unusual. If you look at Canada, the last Canadian general election, the Liberal Party got fewer popular votes, but they elected their prime minister. Germany and India have electoral college type systems. Every parliamentary system works like this, right? The idea that it's unusual to elect your top national executive this way is false. The idea that national popular vote would turn the entire country into the equivalent of a swing state, it might turn the entire country into the equivalent of a safe state, with the media claiming to call an election before it's over. So the claim that we're going to see higher voter turnout, I think, is absurd. And Massachusetts was used as an example of a safe state, but Massachusetts is one of the highest voting states in the country. Finally, Maine's unique system. Maine is an example of what you can do with the Electoral College, keeping the power in your state. Right. I'd love to go to other states and talk about the success of Maine. If you go to a national popular vote system, you're throwing that all away. It certainly is not compatible with ranked choice voting. I'd be glad to talk about that. We've done some work on that, but Maine should protect what it has rather than enacting this national popular vote compact. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. England. Questions from the committee? Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. England, for being here. See if I understand some of what you're saying. So if we were to enact the National Popular Vote Compact, it would now then require our electors, because the Electoral College is not abolished. We still vote with the Electoral College. So we'd have to accept the votes from other states towards that national popular vote that aren't certified by our own Secretary of State. And we'd have to say that we agree with those certified votes in order to send our electors to the college.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the National Popular Vote Compact, and I am also an attorney. I mean, just from a legal drafting perspective, is kind of a disaster, because it just assumes, and I suppose, I mean, you can give them credit, right? They came up with this back in, maybe 2004, 2005. This is long before 2016, and our politics was, a little bit less fractious then, although still competitive. But the National Popular Vote Compact just acts as if every state, every Secretary of State in every state will trust every other state's election process. Because if you don't, it doesn't work. I mean, the compact will simply not function. There's no process for refereeing any kind of disputes. And so, yeah, I mean, if the people in Maine, if the Secretary of State in Maine look at the results from some other state and they say, hey, we don't think that state's honest, or if some state that's not in the RCV or not in the NPV compact says, we're not going to turn over our vote totals to, we're going to hold them off. We've seen both New Hampshire and North Dakota have considered state legislation to do something like that. I mean, the NPV compact just literally offers you no way to deal with that. You could literally have different compact states certifying different national popular vote totals depending on how they decided to interpret the results from other states. No, that's right. It's a real disaster, I think, if this compact should ever take effect.
Any further questions from the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you for testifying today, Mr. England.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Michael Morley, followed by Penny Morrill and Sean Parnell. So welcome, Mr. Morley.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Morley. I'm an assistant professor of law at Florida State University College of Law, and I'm here testifying in my personal capacity. I teach and research in the field of election law. I have an article forthcoming in the Harvard Law and Policy Review entitled "The Framers' Inadvertent Gift, the Electoral College and the Constitutional Infirmities of the National Popular Vote Compact." In my brief time here, I'd like to quickly touch upon some of the major problems with the compact, especially for a smaller state such as Maine. The compact says to each voter in Maine, it doesn't matter which presidential candidate a majority of voters in your district wants, or even a majority of voters in your state. Your votes will be diluted and likely overwhelmed by votes from other states, like mine, in determining who Maine's electors will be. The compact violates the Constitution in several ways, but most basically the Equal Protection Clause. In Bush v. Gore, the Supreme Court held that a jurisdiction may not afford arbitrary and disparate treatment to different voters participating in the same election. At least in some major respects, the same voting rules must apply to all members of the same electorate. Maine's rules for voting differ from those of other states, including its rules for voter registration, ranked choice voting, rules governing opportunities for voting and the conduct of voting, like voter ID, and even the more technical rules for accepting or rejecting contested ballots. The National Popular Vote Compact treats the entire nation as the relevant electorate for presidential elections, combining everyone's votes together to determine the outcome. That violates the Equal Protection Clause because those votes were cast and counted based on materially different rules. Second, structurally, the current system gives small states like Maine an advantage. Its voice is enhanced relative to its share of the national population due to the 2 extra electoral votes it receives as a result of its 2 U.S. senators. For example, Maine has about 1 million voters and 4 electoral votes. Washington State has just under 5 million voters and 12 electoral votes. By national popular vote, Washington would get 5 times the voice in selecting the president as Maine, whereas in the Electoral College, under the current systems, Washington's voice is only 3 times as strong. Third, in terms of encouraging voter turnout, a person goes from being 1 out of about 1 million voters in Maine for electoral votes determined on a statewide basis, and even fewer for congressional districts, to 1 out of 159 million voters, based on the last election, if results are determined nationally. Many people are likely to feel their votes count for even less. And finally, and most importantly, the current system acts as a firewall. We can have an election for president conducted as a series of 51 independent contests. Problems within one state do not affect other states. Recounts and post-election litigation are limited to particular jurisdictions. Especially after what we saw with the last election, we don't want to risk having Bush v. Gore on a national basis under a national popular vote system, rather than keeping disputes confined to particular jurisdictions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Morley. Any questions from the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Okay, next up we have Penny Morrill, followed by Sean Parnell and Matthew Rhodes. So welcome, Ms. Morrell.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm Penny Morrell, State Director of Concerned Women for America of Maine, speaking for Concerned Women for America, LAC. CWA of Maine opposes LD 1384, an act to adopt the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It seems that following every presidential election, the debate surfaces concerning the Electoral College and the popular vote. But in recent years, the voices are getting louder and more adamant. Our form of government is a constitutional republic. The word democracy is not found in our Pledge of Allegiance or the US Constitution. We elect people to make decisions in government for us. We can express our views like I'm doing now, but in the end, those elected officials cast a vote. If we don't approve of their vote, we can elect someone else in the next election. The founders were careful to guard against a direct democracy or the majority rule because it doesn't protect the minority. The Electoral College is a safeguard against the tyranny of the majority. Democracy is like two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner. Like these ideals and with these ideals in mind, the founders, brilliantly created the Electoral College, where we elect electors who vote for the president and vice president on our behalf. The founders intended the electors to be more astute regarding issues and qualifications of candidates and not swayed by biased media. The Electoral College compels candidates and political parties to focus on all regions and coalitions rather than heavily populated states and certain groups of individuals. A national popular vote, on the other hand, would ensure that California and New York would elect the president, making Maine and other small states irrelevant. It would force our 4 main electors to vote for whoever wins the national popular vote. Under a popular vote system, a close election would require a nationwide recount, opening the door to fraud. However, the safer state-run election is monitored and held accountable by our own county auditors and Secretary of State. The Electoral College ensures that presidential elections are not federally controlled. Our Constitution is a brilliant document and needs to be obeyed, preserving our Republican form of government, our states' rights, and our liberties. I ask this committee to vote 545. LD 1384 ought not to pass. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Morrell. Any questions from the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Sean Parnell, followed by Matthew Rhodes and Dan Chase. So welcome,
you,
Mr. Parnell. Yep. Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to testify. I'm Sean Parnell. I'm with Save Our States, an organization focused on defending and promoting the Electoral College. I have submitted longer testimony that I would encourage all of you to read because it goes into much greater detail than I can go into in 3 minutes. But I do want to hit on just a couple of topics that are in that testimony. The national popular vote assumes that there will be a single, accurate, and timely vote total from every state for every candidate that can then be used to determine the winner. For a number of reasons that I'll get into, this is not necessarily accurate. This assumption is incorrect. Regarding the accuracy, the compact expects your Secretary of State to obtain totals from other states from something called either the Certificate of Ascertainment or the state's statewide canvass. The problem is the numbers on these documents are not necessarily accurate. The biggest error was in 2012 when New York's Certificate of Ascertainment was missing approximately 425,000 votes. In 2008, it was missing 81,000 votes. In 2016, it was missing 101,000 votes. And this last election, both it and the statewide canvass were missing about 29,000 votes. Under the compact, your Secretary of State, other secretaries of state would be required to, or at least expected to accept these vote totals that are inaccurate and incomplete. Regarding ranked choice voting, the fact is that ranked choice voting and national popular vote are simply incompatible, because under ranked choice voting, a state can provide two different vote totals for one candidate: the initial vote tally and the final vote tally. Now, the amendment that your Secretary of State has offered attempts to solve this, but actually makes one problem even bigger. Under ranked choice voting, if a third party or an independent candidate were to finish ahead of either the Democratic or Republican candidate in just a handful of states, then what happens is the votes for that Democratic or Republican candidate get completely erased. They will not be reported. In 1992, for example, Ross Perot finished ahead of George Bush in Maine. George Bush would have had subtracted or never appear in the national vote totals about 207,000 votes. The policy or the amendment that your Secretary of State has offered does not address this problem. It in fact ensures that those large numbers of votes will be erased. Regarding the timeliness, the compact and the federal law in terms of when states are required to report vote totals and how they report them simply don't line up. I just encourage you to, again, read my testimony and find more detail on that. The problem with national popular vote is that there is no official national popular vote count that can be used to conclusively determine who the winning candidate is if there's a close election. And 4 of the last 16 elections have been close, at least for national popular votes purposes. So I urge you to vote against this, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Parnell. Any questions from the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony, sir.
You're very welcome.
Okay, next up we have Matthew Rhodes, and Matthew will be followed by Dan Chase and William Ross. So, welcome, Mr. Rhodes.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for allowing me to speak, I guess, as you might say. And I want to thank you guys for all the hard work that you guys have to go through in being politicians or whatever it is you call yourselves. I don't know. I guess you're politicians. Anyway, I'm not much of a public speaker, as you can already tell. It seems to me, though, and everybody's talking about numbers and money and our integrity and things like this, but it seems to me that what we're not talking about is this concern. This concern that I have is that we're putting such an importance on the presidency and what that office actually means. Now, I'm not saying that it's not that important, but we want everybody's voice to be heard, and that's great. We want everybody to have their 2 cents in, but aren't we really teaching people the presidency is more important than it actually is? I mean, shouldn't state sovereignty be more important? Shouldn't we be focused more on the opinions of the state? And so that's really where my brain is going. I don't know if that really makes sense to everybody, but it seems to me that we're introducing a change in the entire Constitution of the United States simply based on a false pretense that the presidency should be really all this important, and it really shouldn't be. The president shouldn't have this much power. So we're in other words, it's like kind of like a straw argument. It's like, oh, everything has to be so important, so we get our president in. Well, if the president didn't have so much power, maybe that wouldn't really matter so much. And but that, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I think that the Electoral College preserves the checks and balances. And it's easy to want popular votes when you're in the popular group of people. That's what I really believe. But you're the guy that's in the majority. Yeah, you want, but what about, how do we protect the minority? How do we protect the little guy? And I don't think that this bill is going to do that. And I think that's what we should always be looking at. Is it's nice when you're in charge, but when you're not in charge, boy, I don't think you want this this democracy. I think you prefer to have a republic. and an electoral college so that you could preserve the minority voices, as they did with slavery when Lincoln was elected. And if it wasn't for the electoral college, Lincoln wouldn't have become president. I do know that much. So anyway, I appreciate all your time, and I hope that you vote against this bill or anything that has to do with it or smells like it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Any questions from the committee? Chairman Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. I'm sorry, I may have missed it at the beginning, but could you please introduce yourself and where you're from and who you're representing for the record? Please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I am from Parsonsfield, Maine, and I am not representing anybody, fortunately, because they'd probably be embarrassed. But anyway, but I'm from Parsonsfield. I'm new to Maine. I love Maine, and I love that there's only 1 million people here. So thank you very much for having me. Is there anything else? Please don't ask me anything technical either.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Senator Hickman has a question for you. Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes, for your testimony. Where did you move here from?
I am from all over. Originally, I'm from New Jersey, and then I moved to Florida, and then I've been here, Maryland, and then Florida. I did work for a little while with politicians down in as a kind of an assistant lobbyist in DC for a while, very short period of time. But,
so your premise is very interesting about maybe the president shouldn't be considered so important. The Constitution does prescribe, though, the president with the power to support Supreme Court justices. Is that an important?
It is. It's important. But if we maintain state sovereignty, then maybe like when laws get passed, they wouldn't be overshadowed. I mean, I know the Constitution is the law of the land, but I guess I'm with a group of people that is trying to protect state sovereignty. And I think that like every time the president comes up with these laws and these rules and everything just goes across the board and everybody gets taxed, uniformly, and some states just can't afford that much oversight. You know what I mean? Like they can't afford all these things universally like other states can, so maybe if the president didn't have so much power, we wouldn't have to worry about that so much, but maybe if it shouldn't be. Yeah, I mean, I guess the Supreme Court is super important, but again, like how much should their laws affect, how much should they be doing to legislate, our money and our will, so anyway, that was the worst answer I could have given.
That's good, Mr.
Oh, good. I just wanted to hear. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Hey, I think about some of these things, so I wanted to come in and say today I didn't think this was a good idea, but thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Rhodes, for coming in and testifying, and welcome to Maine.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Next up, we have Dan Chase. He'll be followed by William Ross, who I don't see in the testimony, and then that completes the people who were registered to testify in advance. If there's anybody who signed up late in the waiting room, we've got one more followed out, Nick Murray. So welcome, Mr. Chase.
Thank you. You've completely ignored Maine Constitution, Article 4.
Excuse me, sir. Can you begin by introducing yourself and where you're from?
Dan Chase, Levant, and I've worked with the Maine Constitutional Coalition and Freedom Works.
Great.
Under Maine Constitution, Article 4, Part 3, Section 1, the legislature, with the exceptions hereinafter stated, shall have full power to make and establish all reasonable laws and regulations for the defense and benefit of the people of this state, not repugnant to this Constitution nor to that of the United States. Now, the Electoral College was created to ensure low population states maintained a voice in the federal government. You want to take and remove a protection from the state that does not benefit us, it does not defend us. The only way you can say this benefits the people of Maine is because we're too stupid to know how to vote, so we have to allow somebody else to take our vote away from us. The only way you can say it defends us is it defends us against our own idiocy, which, I'm sorry, but I have the right to vote for the stupidest candidate there is. Therefore, it blatantly violates Maine Constitution, Article 4, Part 3, Section 1. Now, the Electoral College was created by the founders because Small states said, we don't want to get lost in the federal government. We want to make sure we get heard. And you're trying to remove that. I would say, therefore, you are violating both the Constitution of the United States and the state of Maine. You are destroying states' rights in a similar way to what happened when they removed the senators from being elected by the legislatures to popular vote. So now the state has lost that protection, the only protection it had in the federal government. When you remove rights the states held, you are impacting the 10th Amendment because the states reserve the right to have their voices heard. And this legislation is going against that constitutional guarantee. Doesn't matter if it's done by the legislature, you cannot do that. Whereas it doesn't benefit the people of Maine to remove their vote for the presidential candidate of their choice. And whereas it does not defend the people of Maine against anything to remove their voice when it could result in a president winning who would have lost if Maine citizens had their voices. Their electoral votes counted as they were cast. This bill is blatantly unconstitutional. In fact, this bill goes so far against the United States and Maine constitutions that this bill is anti-constitutional, not just unconstitutional, blatantly anti-constitutional and must not pass. This is something that ignores the concept of a Republican form of government. In a democracy, 51% of the people can vote to rape, rob, and murder the other 49% because democracy, mob rule. In a republic, we have protections put in place to protect the minority. The Electoral College protects the minority, small states, and the right of the people to cast a vote for who they want. Per maxim of law, that which is done contrary to the custom of our ancestors is neither considered pleasing nor rights. Our ancestors believed that we were supposed to do it this way. Therefore, it is not right and it is legally impossible to do. And once you want to do it
your time has
constitutionally,
expired, but if you can wrap it up very quickly, that would be great.
okay, you're screwing with two constitutions illegally, illegitimately, and you're basing it on democracy when we have a republic. If you want to take and modify the Electoral College, get an amendment, remove it completely, or do whatever, but this is improper. Any questions, ask me.
Great. Thank you for your testimony today, Mr. Chase. Okay, next up on our list, we have, sorry, was it Nick Murray? Yes, I don't believe we have Mr. Ross in the room, so welcome, Mr. Murray.
Hello, good afternoon. Senator Lucchini, Representative Cayazzo, the distinguished members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Nick Murray. I live in Cornish, and I'm here to represent Maine Policy Institute. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that advocates for individual liberty and economic freedom in Maine. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on LD 1330 and LD 1384. As Maine state lawmakers, you are responsible for representing residents and voters across various parts of the state, many of whom live in rural areas. Yet many contend that a national popular vote will be better for Maine voters than the current system, under which the state's two congressional districts separately distribute each electoral vote. Only Maine and Nebraska use a system similar to this. By joining the National Popular Vote Compact, Maine would give up its uniquely beneficial system for one that would reward large US metropolitan areas, none of which are located in Maine. Even if Maine allocated its electoral votes like the other 48 states do, our second congressional district would forego the attention it has seen over the last few presidential cycles. Our current method of allocating electoral votes is useful and it retains the distinct differences between our two congressional districts. If anything, other small states like Maine, even big diverse ones like California or Texas even, might find benefit in using a system similar to Maine's current division of electoral votes by congressional district, instead of shifting to a nationalized vote for president. This effort would be better directed towards encouraging other states to adopt our model rather than encouraging a nationalized vote. There is no doubt that using popular vote for president would greatly diminish the albeit already small level of clout that Maine currently holds in these contests. The towns in Maine CD2 would no longer be considered part of a swing district, and the voters of that district would no longer be visited by presidential candidates and high-profile surrogates during the campaign season like we've seen the last few times around. Why would a campaign trek an additional 3 to 4 hours north from Boston for an event in Bangor or Lewiston Auburn if it could engage more voters than the entire state of Maine just within Eastern Massachusetts. By moving to a national popular vote system, Maine loses its unique voice in presidential elections. For a Maine state legislator to support NPV is to completely discount the opinions of one's constituents and instead defer to national level politics to make their decisions for them. After all, New York City has more residents than 39 individual states. Campaigns need both swing states and safe states as part of the Electoral College, but swing states also change over time. Since 1968, 34 out of the 50 states have been labeled as swing states at one time or another. Just a word on Secretary Bello's RCV amendment. This would only count the final round votes of RCV, and we've been very critical of the system because it eventually throws out ballots in the end, even those that were properly marked. So this extends the sort of fatal flaw of RCV by potentially leaving out these valid ballots from Maine's contribution to the national popular vote. You want each vote to count the same, but eventually through ranked choice voting, if folks don't fill it out all the way, their votes won't even make it to the final round. So they're not even in the NPV count. So in closing, if there's one thing that Mainers abhor, it is ceding our destiny to big cities and high paid political consultants. Please deem LD 1330 and LD 1384 ought not to pass, and reject this unnecessary and misguided idea to give away Maine's presidential electoral power to larger, more populous states. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Murray, for your testimony today. Any questions from the committee at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thanks, sir. Okay, I believe that is all that we have registered to testify through the portal this morning. Sorry, my internet is really bad this morning. Yeah, so I believe that's it. So that will conclude the public hearings on LDs 1330 and 1384. Public hearings are closed. So that actually, I believe, concludes our work for today. We got those two bills late and we wanted to put them on the agenda, and we'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to start some work sessions. So if there's no other announcements, anybody have an announcement before we adjourn for the day? Okay, seeing none. Thanks everybody for being here, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10. So we'll adjourn for the day. Thanks.